and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
Hello, everybody. Welcome inside a Friday episode of Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Anthony Hartwig alongside Ty Bartell. And it is Veterans Day. That's why I'm in my camo. So before we do anything, I want to take the time to thank all of our veterans in this country that make everything that we're able to do on this show. I mean, we are able to sit here and just talk about sports like Jacamos for a couple of hours every day because of the sacrifices that veterans have made all across this country. So I want to take this time to thank them and all their service and all that they do for us. We are so into our veterans here at YSN. There's a reason why our colors are red, white, and blue. And thank you so much again for your service, and happy Veterans Day to all of those who have served in the military. I think we have a couple of members of the YSN family that have been in the service. Figley from East Liverpool, I almost said East Liverpool, East Palestine. He's in the Navy, and Tommy Pease, one of our great voices of East Liverpool, is also a member of the Air Force. And then, of course, our buddy Tristan Reynolds, who's now the new head coach over there at East Palestine boys basketball, but got his start at YSN doing the Power Hour back in the early days of the Power Hour. He's a member of the Air Force too. So we want to give a special shout out to those guys and everyone in the YSN family that is a member of a military organization.
Adding on to the YSN family, my personal family has also seen a few amount of veterans too, including my grandfather, my uncle, just to name a few too. So heart goes out to those guys too for all the service that they've had in the military too, and fighting and defending our country, for me to be here right now, being able to produce this show and bring a voice to local athletes. So we thank all of them for the sacrifices and the time, and not only whether it's lifetime, whatever, all the sacrifices they made for us overseas.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a family that doesn't have a veteran somewhere in their family tree.
There usually is one somewhere down the line at some point too, and I mean it's a cool thing, but it's also it's a real thing too that you open your eyes to. And this is just one day, but you should always thank veterans no matter when you see them. But just a day honoring them too. Make sure you absolutely thank a veteran today.
And there is no better way to thank our veterans than to have some playoff football.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of them would get behind that.
Let's go. It's playoffs. It's regional semifinals. Some call it round 3. Some call it week 13. Whatever you want to go with. We have 5 games over the weekend. One payment of $9.99 gets you access to all 5. So if you buy the games tonight, you still have access to the games tomorrow. You don't have to repurchase with the change of date. So one payment gets you all 5 games over the weekend. And we will start with tonight's games, Ty. Canfield versus Ursuline at Niles. This is going to be the broadcast team. It's going to be Richie Giuliano, Anthony Romo, Kyle Wills, and Mike Ackelson, all at Niles calling this game.
That's going to be wild. Here's DJ chiming in. We don't know them all, but we owe them all. Thank you, veterans. And that's a shout out and some love from the owner, the boss man himself, too. And always, too, DJ's never shy about showing that love, too. And he always is showing that love, too, throughout the Power Hour as well. But, yeah, to talk about this matchup, though, I mean, this is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. Both of these teams that we talked about early on in the season as potential to make a state championship run. The problem was they were just going to eventually run into each other, is what we said. And this is exactly the case. Canfield has the defense, no doubt, that to make that kind of run this year. They have the linebacking core, they have the line core, they have the secondary, and they have a next level quarterback that can definitely tune them up on offense. But Ursuline, I mean, they are all offense. Someone gets hurt, they can just insert someone and go like a machine. They're just as potent, I feel like, as they were a year ago, which is hard to do considering everyone that's seniored out. But this Ursuline team, they score at will anymore, man.
You know, I don't know if people expected this team to be as explosive as because they lost so much explosiveness from last year's team. McElroy graduated, Boyd graduated, their quarterback, Brady Shannon, graduated. And they just inserted more athletes right into those positions and said, let's just be just as explosive.
Both Boyd and Ja'Kylan Irving, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 wideouts, a running back, and your quarterback. Literally big key positions for offense. They insert new guys, and it all works. And Coach Reard knows the guys that he needs to put in that system, but that's a system that just works offensively. He's been doing it a long time. On their side, too, Coach Pavlansky, another guy well-known throughout this area, well-known name. These are 2 really good head coaches. These are 2 really good teams. These are 2 really good communities that get a local site, too. Niles, right down the road from both of them, not too far. I think Niles is going to be rocking with both of these communities in it.
When you're talking about this game and the X's and O's standpoint, I think you look at some common opponents. Obviously, they both played Cheney. And you look at how those games went. I think they're a little bit different styles. I think Canfield's a little bit more. They can punch you in the mouth for sure. They can hit that big play, but they love the drives that are long, sustained. They like to run the ball. They're physical. You look at Ursuline's offense. They're spreading you out, right? They're like, okay, let's use our athleticism, try to get some one-on-one coverage, and try to win our one-on-one matchups. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of team really imposes their style of football more. And I think if Ursuline can stay away from the turnovers, that's the only thing that's been their bugaboo this year. The only thing that slowed Ursuline down this year, their offense, is themselves, right? When they've had self-inflicted wounds.
So here's the numbers too. Now, granted, you got to take into account Canfield has 1 less game than Ursuline does because of a cancellation throughout the season. But in these games too, in 12 games for Ursuline compared to 11 games for Canfield, Ursuline's offense has scored 96 points more on the season. Canfield's defense, however, has allowed 114 points less on the season. So if that kind of shows you about 100-point difference on offense for Ursuline, but 100-point difference defensively for Canfield, you can see it's an offensive team against a defensive team. We've seen both these teams play to their strengths. Not to say that, and that old adage, defense can win championships. Well, hey, Ursuline kind of defied that motto, right? They were an offensive team last year. They played enough defense in key situations to get them over the hump and get them to a state championship. Now, granted, they might not have won a state championship, but they can get the cap off on this season too. They're an offensive team, but they can beat very good, solid defensive teams.
And let me tell you, 100 points is not one game. So, yeah, Canfield has 1 less game. It's not 100 points worth. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Canfield's defense has been locked up. I think, I could be wrong, I think the most they've given up was to Drew DeShields in week 1.
I believe
31
you're correct.
points to him.
117 they've allowed all season long, too, defensively. So a team that's barely allowed over 100 points of offense on the season. It's a very potent defense against a very high-flying offense on the Irish's side.
Now, sometimes their offense, Canfield's offense, can get into a couple of drives in a row where they're in slumps. And if you do that at the wrong time against Ursuline, you could find yourselves down 2 possessions really quickly. So I think Canfield has to make sure that they're at least moving the ball and winning the field position battle every possession. I don't think they can afford to have too many 3-and-out punts where where Ursuline gets to flip the field and giving that offense a short field.
If I'm kind of in that situation, though, with Canfield, I don't know if I'm necessarily being super aggressive on 4th down because it depends on where you are in the field. You might you'd rather punt it away than turn it over against this Irish team, because if you do give them a short field,
Right.
you're almost giving them 6 guaranteed. You'd rather make them work that long field, trust your defense in a longer field. I know that defense is good, but you don't want to take chances giving them a shorter field and putting your defenses back against the wall. I'd almost trust, especially if the weather is what it is tonight, we get this game up. I'm trusting on my defense. I'm going to be punting it away on 4th, and I'm going to say, hey, we got here because of our defense.
Well,
if we lose here, it's going to be because of the defense.
That was my next point, was how is this weather going to affect Ursuline and Canfield's offense, and how does it affect, which team is going to set the tone? I think
advantage.
It provides itself to more of a defensive battle, right?
Mm-hmm. Advantage Canfield, definitely. And I mean, you got to look at the weather, because this is one time where it's finally going to take into effect. We've had an unusually warm October, November kind of combination where we haven't had any kind of adverse weather conditions. This is where you can see what teams are good compared to what teams are great, because you got to be great to handle these kind of conditions.
And it's honestly why the state wants everything to be played on turf. That way weather doesn't come into a field condition factor, and you can't say that this team or that team lost because the field got just unplayable or whatever that may be. I mean, you kind of miss the mud bowls. You're not going to get a mud bowl anymore with all these turf games. But at the same time, you see both sides that fight.
You could say it's a disadvantage Canfield, because it's going to be a defensive battle, but the disadvantage is going to be on Canfield's side, is going to be offensively. Brock Lowry is a quarterback that likes to throw. He might be forced into one-dimensional, having to be a running kind of QB tonight. I don't know how many throws he's going to get off if there's a fair amount of rain. That's going to be another interesting thing to see how many pass calls are going to be called.
I'm looking at the Storm Tracker 21 app to see how much rain we're supposed to get and what the forecast is for the rest of the day. Pretty much 100% from now until kickoff.
It's going to be rain.
But the percentage does go down from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 70%, 70%, and then 60% at 10. So you could see some places the rain lighten as the second half starts to kick off. But the first half, it's going to be wet. And already we've gotten 10 millimeters of rain so far today. We're supposed to get, I think, 40 or 50, maybe a half an inch of rain today as far as the Storm Tracker 21 forecast. So that is going to make conditions, weird. I want to see the wind. I want to check the wind real quick, too, see what the wind's supposed to do. It's supposed to be the wind factor. It says comes in at 8 o'clock with wind conditions starting to gust when that rain starts to slow down a little bit. So in the second half, you might get less rain, but might get more wind.
And wind can be tough too, especially on the kickers as well. And both of these teams have some solid kicking games. It's going to be I'm curious to see how this weather is going to affect this game. But Ursuline, Canfield, you kind of have to throw that little X factor of weather into the mix too, to make things interesting. Let's see what's going to happen between two of the area's best programs.
The good news is lightning is not in the forecast. This is supposed to be a showery day, not a stormy day. So there is no chance of, lightning delays or anything crazy like that would make you stay out of the football field until 11 or 12
o'clock. Madness would be if we do have lightning too, we're going to have a crazy Saturday of football, because then likely we're going to have to.
If something happened where the lightning was so bad they had to push the games to tomorrow.
Which it could happen too. I mean, you're not going to start it off super, super late. I got to figure too.
That into existence.
Yeah, we're not going to. Hopefully it stays away. It looks like it's going to, like you said, according to our storm tracker over at 21. So we'll pay attention to that, and be sure you pay attention to that as you're going out. But definitely pack rain gear tonight, folks. You're going to need it.
Yeah, and then it doesn't get any better, because in the next couple of days we're going to be getting the overhang of that hurricane that just hit Florida yesterday as well. So next couple of days for weather, going to be a little bit wet, and actually it's going to get cold starting next week, right when basketball season starts. Mother Nature's like, hey, guess what?
They know. I'm telling you, they know when to start.
It's winter. Ursuline Canfield tonight at 7. Once again, one payment, $9.99, gets you access to that in the rest of the 5 playoff games that we're going to be talking. Well, so the 4 playoff games. That is the 5th that we're going to be talking about today. And we go into the next one that is tonight, and it's one that's been talked about. It seems like this one has been talked about for so long, because for so long, these two programs have wanted to play each other, especially the fan bases. They've wanted to test each other and say, what would happen if Moody and South Range matched up with each other? And we're going to find out tonight. And I believe it's the first time in their football program's history that these two teams are matching up.
And flat out, too, Anthony, if there's anyone in this region that has played a schedule that can prepare them for a matchup against the Raiders, it's Cardinal Mooney. Yep. Mooney's one of the only teams I look at in that region that has played up the entire season, has tested themselves regularly on a week-to-week basis. If there's any team that's prepared for this challenge of South Range, it's Mooney. But now in saying that, South Range is also a team that has always been potent offensively, but they've kicked it into a new gear defensively. And that's going to be the one thing I'm going to be looking at, especially again, since weather's going to be a factor. Mooney's defense has been good enough to compete with anybody. And I firmly believe Mooney's defense will be good enough to compete with South Range tonight.
Yes, I do too.
It's the offense that's always kind of come into question with the Cardinals this season. When they've dropped games, it's because the offense hasn't been able to move the ball. I don't know how much this is going to help them at all. I don't think it does, because if you take Ashton O'Brien's kind of passing game away, or at least hinder it a little bit because of the weather, it could make this a very long night for Mooney trying to get points. But flip side too, it could be the same thing for the Raiders. It's going to be a defensive battle. Luckily, though, for both these teams, they have a very good defense. I don't know who it favors, though, more, Anthony, with the rain being in play.
Yeah, I think because both these teams, and I've said this about South Range all season, so this isn't something that I'm just saying this week to fit the narrative. I think their defense is more of their identity this year.
It's the weather getting a hold of you.
Excuse me. Let me take a drink, then I'll finish that thought. I think the defense is more their identity this year. Yes, their offense can score. We've seen it. They can score really quick. They have a really good offense, not taking anything away from that. But you look at their defense and the way they've played this year, it's just lights out every time they go on the field. Even in that Struthers game where their offense really struggled, turned the ball over 5 times, put their defense in a lot of bad situations. Their defense gave up 13 points. This defense of the Raiders is maybe the best defense we've seen South Range have in quite some time, and they've had some good ones. But I think in the past they've been overshadowed by offense, and their offense has been making big plays, and that's how they've won games. Now all of a sudden it's this Raiders defense that is just the identity of this team, and I think it's going to be a game where you see that they're going to need their defense to win the game, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring. Not just because Mooney's defense is really good, but because this weather isn't really indicative of high-octane offense either.
It's a South Range offense that averages over 40 points a game this season, though, against a Mooney defense that hasn't allowed over 30 this season. And with both these teams playing a very tough-nosed type and brand of defense, both of them are going to act as if they have a 12th man on the field at all times defensively, both Mooney and the Raiders. Offense is going to be at a premium in this game. I firmly believe it. And it could come down to the team that scores the first touchdown could be the team that wins. It could be that kind of game where you might want to get the possession right out of the gates and just test yourself and try to march down the field and get a score, because all the scoring might be done early, because once these teams settle in defensively with the weather, it could be very, very tough and challenging to try to move down the field.
That being said, Cardinal Mooney's offense might be clicking at the right time. They were averaging 34 points per game in the playoffs in their first 2 games played. They scored 45 against Edison. They scored 24 last week. So their offense is maybe starting to find a rhythm at the right time. We know it has struggled a lot this season, the regular season. But, it's all about when you click, right? And maybe they're just clicking at the right time as an offense and finding their groove and their identity a little bit. And it doesn't matter how much you struggle on offense in the regular season. If you find that groove in the postseason, you can take all those 10-7 losses and throw them out the window.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know what? Honestly, looking at it, I love both these matchups that we have tonight, first and foremost, because they're all YSN matchups. But second off, these are just really good programs football wise too. You look at the 4 programs too, and conversely enough, they kind of have their own relations to each other. Mooney and Ursuline have their rivalry, and they're in the same conference. And of course, right down the road from each other in Campfield are the Cardinals and South Range. So it's kind of like backyard battles too. Youngstown taking on Campfield in this one. And I like both sides of these matchups too. This one in particular, too, another great local matchup for both South Range and Mooney fans that they don't have to travel too far. So I think that's great that it's going to be rocking in the Valley and a great stadium at Arrowhead as well. I think for this one in particular, like I said, it's going to come down to who scores maybe, I think, even that first touchdown, because I don't know how much more scoring we're going to see as the game goes along and these defenses start settling in.
When I look at that field you talked about, that could be it could be a little bit of an advantage. I'm not a huge component in that, but Coach Jiggly made the point in his show with DJ earlier this week that they've been to Girard plenty of times. They know the facilities, they know where to go, they know everything about Girard's facilities. It's going to be a familiar place that they've played in before a lot of times. So that might be like a tiny little pebble of a thing that could go into the scales of when you're trying to balance, who's got the edge in this game. I know there are some people that think South Range is a runaway favorite. I don't think that at all. I've heard it. I've seen it. I know it's 1 versus 13. That might get some people to be like, oh, well.
I mean, Mooney is a Cinderella story, no doubt. Mooney is the Cinderella story of this year. And you look at
it like Cinderella, because Cinderella's like dirty and dressed in like rags.
Yeah.
Mooney, I can't even think about metaphor, because Mooney had like they've got the record of Cinderella, but then when you look at their schedule, it's like, oh, you're not really dressed in rags. You came into the playoffs shiny. You're a shiny toy that's a really good football team that everyone just didn't think you were because of your record.
The playoff expansion has allowed Mooney to get a seed at the 13th seed, and they have taken it all the way into a semifinal game against South Range right now, and that's huge for the Cardinals. And I said it too, beginning of the season, you put Cardinal Mooney in the playoffs at any seed, doesn't matter which seed, they can run rampant. And that's exactly what happened when Mooney has gotten into the playoffs. They can wreck seasons. They've wrecked a perfect season. They wrecked Norwayne's season, who thought that they were going to be matched up.
Both games on the road, by the way.
Yeah. And you look at it too, on the other side, it's 2 versus 3. It's Garraway and Perry. So Mooney quite a 13 seed going against the 1 seed. Everything else is going chalk up until this point because Mooney ruined some seasons on the way here.
The other interesting thing about this matchup, Coach Yeagley brought this up because they have played Ursuline before in the playoffs at South Range. 2 years in a row, actually, they played Ursuline when Ursuline was the Division 5 team. And he said he reminded them back then Mooney was the big team. They were the one that was up in Division 3, like Ursuline is now. And now it's flipped the tables where Ursuline's the big team.
Yeah.
And now Mooney's the team that falls in the South Range's division.
But it's a matchup that I think we've all been wanting. We're getting it at a great time. We're getting it when both teams have a lot to offer, and we get it when both teams are potentially the hottest that they've been all season too. So it's going to be a great matchup seeing these two square off in a local matchup. And like I said, and like you've said, Anthony, $9.99 gets you access to these games, and you might as well pay for it tonight, whether you're going to the game or not. If you're planning on watching on YSN this weekend, buy them tonight, because then you could go back and rewatch them then tonight if you want, or watch the other game while you're in the stands of one of them.
I don't know if that'll work tonight because you're going to have your iPad out in the rain.
You're going to want to get yourself like a poncho over top too. Some of those stadiums, though, if you get high enough, they have those overhangs as well.
Whatever it takes to watch both games.
But you also get access to tomorrow night's game, so take advantage of it tonight.
My dad's been texting me all week because he's a Mooney alum. I'm a South Range alum.
Oh, I'm sure he's been
a little bit of trash talking going on in the Hartwig family this week. He was a part of the 74 freshman team that went undefeated and unscored upon. So he's a proud Mooney alum of that football program under Coach Butchie. And he's been, it's been a little this. It's been a little this.
For this matchup, though, I mean, Coach Yeagley and company, DJ's been following this story with these guys closer than potentially any of us, guaranteed, I would say, probably any of us with Coach Yeagley and this team and Coach Eagley and their quest to get to that state Final Four and be able to hoist that trophy too.
Mm-hmm.
They seen once Kirtland left as this is their biggest wide open opportunity, and it absolutely is. They have as good a chance as ever to getting back to that stage. But don't think for a second that Mooney can't walk out of Arrowhead Stadium tonight victors. And Mooney's done it before. They've ruined seasons before. I just know one thing's for sure. I'm so excited to see these matchups tonight. I can't wait to see these two teams square off, and I can't wait to see who we have moving on to the regional finals.
The one thing Mooney won't do that another 13 seed might do is sneak up on people, especially not when it's South Range. South Range is a Youngstown area school. They know what Mooney's all about. They're not going to sneak up on South. Like, it's not going to be one of those games.
They're like the monster in the woods, but there's just twigs everywhere. Like, there's no sneaking up on that campsite. You're going to hear them coming.
It's going to be a great matchup between Burgundy and Gold and Cardinal and Gold. Very similar color schemes. It's going to be a fun one in Girard tonight. And once again, you can get it for one payment of $9.99. Gets you access to Canfield, Ursuline, Mooney, South Range, and then the 3 games that we'll have for you tomorrow night as well. We'll talk about those 3 games when we get back from this commercial break on Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
21 News delivers the news as it happens, using the latest technology from where it happens.
Live here outside the Mahoney County.
On air, online,
Wednesday afternoon weather update.
Very dangerous.
and on the 21 News social media platforms.
I'm on the road right now.
21 News, the Valley's only locally owned source for trusted news since 1953.
As fine as the eye can see, the finest hardwoods from the finest trees. Made for your home and within your means, Baird Brothers will help fulfill your dreams. Let life and light come shining through in quiet morns. And heavy traffic, too. Find your easy-to-afford fine hardwood floors and doors and more at BairdBrothers.com.
Every customer has a story, and at Greenwood Chevrolet, we are committed to making sure it ends with you in the right vehicle. I get to be part of somebody's adventure, whether it's buying a car for the first time, helping them get approved, or finding the perfect car for their budget. I'm proud that people trust me with their finances. They trust me to take care of them, and they trust me with their story. I'm Tracy, and I'm ready to go the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Welcome back to Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you as always by our good friends over at Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown, Anthony Hartwig alongside Ty Bartell. We're here previewing the playoff matchups this weekend. We have 5 of them total. We've went over the 2 that are going to happen tonight, which will be a rainy, wet evening. Should be a fun night of football with Mooney matching up with South Range, Canfield matching up with Ursuline. Now we shift our sights to Saturday as we go into the Saturday matchups. And we start with one that's happening in your neck of the woods, Ty, all the way up in Ravenna on that blue turf. West Branch versus Akron Bucktel, an inner city school in Akron that has earned their way to the regional semifinals.
This one's quite literally going to be 2 minutes down the road from my house, no doubt. And it's a beautiful field down there, and we're going to be hoping for West Branch to pull off a victory against an Akron Bucktel team. Another 1 versus 13 matchup. Would you believe it, too? Bucktel, the Cinderella story, I guess, in this one, too. Same kind of deal, I think, as Mooney, where Bucktel's kind of a little bit more known, but not as expected to make a kind of run like this. At least I don't believe it. Akron schools, I want to shout out, have been doing a phenomenal job. All those Akron area schools, too, whether they're parochial or public, they've been doing pretty well.
Bucktel, for like the last 5 or 6 years as a football program, had been like cannibalized a little bit by some of those bigger Massillon schools
Mhm.
like Massillon Jackson, Massillon Washington. But this year it's kind of like a ragtag group of kids that have just come together and said, why not us, right? I mean, I talked to one of the a referee that had their game last week, this week, and he was like, they're a very disciplined team. They do things the right way. They have a quarterback that is going to be really, really good and put on a show. And they're just a team that, when you talk about disciplined teams, they're just a team that does a lot of things really good. Not like one thing great. You're not going to watch film and be like, oh, they're really good at this. We have to stop this. They just do everything kind of good. They're one of those teams that doesn't really have like a huge major hole. They just do everything kind of the right way. They're disciplined. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. It's going to be a game where if West Branch wins, they're going to have to win it while Buckdale's playing well. It's not going to be a game where Buckdale comes in and kind of, cans the game to West Branch.
Buckdale, too, beating number 4 seeded Peninsula Woodridge 24-21 in the first round of the playoffs. Second round, they beat number 5 seeded Canal Fulton Northwest 31-14 to get to this point. West Branch, of course, beating Mogador Field 52-20 in round 1, and Struthers, the 8th seed, in a 54-35 matchup in round 2. So you see these teams, Buckdale they've been tested. They've beaten the teams that they needed to get to this point. They know what's needed to win. West Branch, I feel like, to me, similar kind of case to South Range, and let me explain. You look at the last couple seasons and how West Branch's season ended, it's kind of been similar where Ursuline's kind of been the Kirtland to West Branch the last couple seasons. Ursuline now moving out creates the same kind of opportunity for West Branch as South Range now has to make that kind of run to the state Final Four. This is obviously a tough team, and it's kind of the similar situation where Buckdale is like the Mooney that's going to try to end it and ruin it all for that number 1 seed that's going for it. But for West Branch, they have a wide open opportunity. I think their sights are set at that regional championship, and they don't want anything to stand in their way. Problem is, Buckdale is a team that, just like Mooney, they can walk away victorious on Saturday night. They're more than capable of it.
And I think they're very similar in the sense that they feel like they're gritty. They're in the inner city. They feel like they're disrespected a little bit. Mooney and Buckdale both kind of feel that sense of, we have to go prove that we're as good as our past, maybe. Live up to those banners that are in Mooney's gym. Same with Buckdale. It's going to be, it is very similar type matchups, I think, when you think about it, 1 versus 13. It's funny how that happens. As you have, I was like, how many times last year, how many 13 seeds even made it to the regional semifinals last year? And now we have 2 of them in our Northeast regions.
We love to see it. We love to see it. And for West Branch, the one thing I've loved about this Warriors team all season long, even after that first week loss, is that they have just found ways to win no matter what happens through injuries, no matter what happens through playing time, what happens throughout the course of the game. Someone's having a good game, a bad game. They pick each other up. They step into positions when they need to. And the next guy is always ready. And it's always that next man up mentality that's always ready to step up, step into to take those reins and try to help the Warriors get a win. They're definitely goal-oriented. They're definitely determined this season. And that whole township of Beloit's ready to go crazy over in Ravenna.
At the end of the day, and here's my key difference: Warriors have a guy wearing number 12.
Yeah.
Nobody else does. Because you either have Drew Shields or you don't, and West Branch has them.
They have the YSN MVP too that was just shared and broke today on socials. So YSN's MVP, most valuable player.
He's won so many accolades in his career, no matter what sport you're talking about. Fantastic football player, fantastic basketball player, fantastic baseball player. Seems like he's good at everything he does. But when I'm watching him football, especially this year, the IQ at the quarterback position is just off the charts. He makes all the right decisions. He's elusive in the pocket. He's able to squeak out and make throws on the run. We saw that against, what was it? I think it was the game where they had to have the last second touchdown. I think it was the Lions. I think it was the Lions game where he was being tackled as he threw, and he still threw a dart in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, stuff like that you can't coach.
You need to pair that Michael call too with Drew DeShields for a Heisman with that MVP graphic because it is a perfect. It pairs like wine and cheese. It's a perfect pairing.
I mean, it's just like I said. I mean, there's no other way to say it. The Warriors have 12, and nobody else does. It's just that simple. He's a difference maker, game changer, and when he's on the field, it gives the Warriors an immense chance to win.
I love that whole DeShields family too, having chances to speak with all of them too, one-on-one in previous times. I love that whole DeShields family. I love how supportive they are of each other. Very athletic family, very talented when all of them played as well, both mom and dad, and Penny and Walt. And you look at what that whole family does. Anything they do sports-wise, they seem to be good at.
You need to get Drew back on and get an update on the Family Fantasy Football League. And
yeah, I'm sure. who's on top of that one for sure.
Oh man, no, it's gonna be a fun one, and like I said, I think Drew DeShields is just a difference maker, and there's a reason why he's the MVP this year, and that's one of the reasons why, because West Branch without him is a different team.
Yeah,
it's all about what kind of impact you make on your program. And I think Drew DeShields is such a game changer, such a game wrecker. And this isn't a slight to the other players on the West Branch because they have a lot of really, really good, talented players. He's just one of those kids that if you're off the roster, if you don't have him, the ability of your football team goes down significantly because he's that kind of guy. He's him. He is him.
For sure. We're excited to see what he's able to do. Him and company are able to do as Go Warriors tonight. We're hoping that Beloit has something to celebrate coming home from Ravenna.
All right, Ty, we talked about South Range's playoff game. They're going to be hosting a game on Saturday, and it is going to be hosting a NE8 rival as Jefferson comes into South Range to play their playoff game against Canton South. And Jefferson's a team that just has found ways to win in the playoffs. They beat Poland 14-13, and they beat Girard last week 26-20. Were they perfect wins? Were they immaculate wins? No, but they got the job done. End of story. You're muted.
I think Coach Hanna is one of the better coaches that we have under the YSN banner. And I mean, you see what he's been able to do in his short time over there at Jefferson, and it's been really impressive. And you want to talk about a guy kind of like Babe Ruth calling his shot. He absolutely did beginning of the season. He said, we're going to be more competitive against the NE8. That's the goal. That's the goal of all these kids this season. And that's exactly what they did. They came in. They were competitive against the NE8. They got a win against Girard, a win they didn't get in the regular season, so they added another NE8 win to their belt. And now Jefferson is sitting pretty with a chance to go to a regional final. Canton South, though, the team that sits on the other side of them, similar record, both teams 9-3, 6 seed Jefferson, 7 seed Canton South. It's a Canton South team that beat Beaver Local, and it was a Beaver Local team that was beating a lot of teams in the fourth quarter, and Canton South found a way to survive a fourth quarter from Beaver Local.
It was a straight-up shootout in Beaver Local last week with Canton South and Beaver Local, which was not what I expected at all, because you watch, Canton South defense the week before held Salem to 21. I thought their defense would come in and make this kind of a lower-scoring game, and it would have to be Beaver Local. But, man, Canton South's offense was like, hey, we're here too. And they scored a lot of points. What was it? 56-48, I think was the final score in Beaver Local last week. So Canton South, they can play defense. They proved that against Salem in their first playoff game. But if you get them in a shootout, they're comfortable with that too. It's a dangerous team. I think Jefferson needs their defense. I don't think they want to get into a shootout with Canton South. Their offense hasn't been that high caliber a team that's comfortable in a shootout type of game. So they need to rely on their defense, get some stops, and keep this game probably in the 20s if they want a chance to win, just like they did against Girard.
There's a rabid Wildcat that's been taking out YSN teams in the playoffs. They took out our Quakers. They took out our Beavers. We need the Falcons to fly high and avenge the losses.
What a story that would be if Jefferson comes into the regional finals.
You know what? I would love nothing more. And I mean, obviously we're rooting for them hardcore too, as one of our YSN teams that are still left and alive too. We saw the 4-0 and Gold Boys. I was watching a little bit last night too. They had a party
from Jefferson.
They did a great job. And if you haven't seen that, you should check that out before tomorrow matchup because I think they did a great job just prepping you, getting a chance to talk with some players. Even the Falcon was there in the crowd too, so they were hype and they were getting ready for the Saturday matchup.
Bring a live Falcon to South Range.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping Jefferson's able to fly high and avoid Canton South's reign of terror against YSN teams. And I hope Jefferson's able to book their ticket to a regional final. You want to talk about a team that hosted their first playoff game, won their first playoff game, and then just keeps winning in the playoffs now.
On Monday, Coach Hanna posted a really awesome Facebook post. It was a memory of last year, and it was the seniors and a couple of juniors, the players that he knew were going to be leaders this year. Last year, after they got eliminated out of the season, they were at Coach's house and they were having a team meeting about what the plans for this year were going to be and how they were going to lead their team. And now here they are, same time this year, preparing for a regional semifinal. So those kids get a lot of credit. They have bought into what Coach Hanna has said. They bought into all the plans that were made back at Coach Hanna's house last year after the season was over. Grant Hitchcock and company have led a tremendous group. But I think you hit the nail on the head at the start. Like, Coach Hanna is one of the best coaches in the area this year. Jefferson is having – you could argue it if you want, but I don't think it would be much of an argument. They're having the best season their program has ever had in football, period.
And we love to see it. I love to see because we've noticed Jefferson too being under the YSN banner the last few years. Their basketball team, their boys basketball team, making a nice run last year. Their volleyball team showcasing it this fall as well. Like, Jefferson athletics is on the rise, or are on the rise in multiple areas too, boys and girls side. Football team is included in it, and it starts with the coaching staffs, and it starts with who the administration is putting in those positions. And it seems like everywhere they're getting an A+.
Softball team sent a Division I pitcher to Akron a year ago, with Sheridan Wilbur. So softball not a slouch in Jefferson either.
It feels like they're in the middle of nowhere when I have to drive up there to visit the Falcons. But boy, oh boy, do they bring in some top-tier athletes over there in Jefferson and some top-tier coaching, some high-quality people, no doubt.
So they'll match up with Canton South tomorrow. That's going to be a 7 o'clock kickoff from South Range High School. And it's going to be Pat Sarter and the 441 Gold crew both there for the 7 o'clock kickoff. From South Range. Last playoff game of the week tomorrow is going to be Warren JFK versus Southern. It'll be at Canfield, and Dom O'Brien and Larry Scragg are going to be on the call. Larry's been calling a lot of Southern games, and obviously Dom O'Brien is the voice of Warren JFK, so we're going to have maybe a little bit of separation in the booth. We're going to have to keep these two,
keep them at bay from each other. This is,
Trey in the Urson Fitch game last year.
Yeah. Trey was loving it too. And you know what? I love to see it. I love to see when these announcers get super passionate about their teams. And honestly, you look at the remaining teams, Danville and Lucas are taking on each other on the other side, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. But to me, and I mean, I'm going to probably be biased in this, out of those, the 4 teams or the 3 teams left that can possibly be the team that can give JFK a run for their money and take down JFK, I feel like Southern, I think, has one of the best opportunities to do so. And I just look at, I know Southern's strength of schedule might not pair well as Danville's and Lucas's has, but Southern's defense has been top notch all season long.
I think it's going to be the winner of this game versus Lucas in the regional final.
Lucas is like one of those teams. Yeah, they have that kind of schedule that can definitely get them to that regional final. And for JFK, I mean, they've been here before. This is business as usual for Warren JFK. For a lot of these kids, whether they played last season or not, it's a team that just reoccurringly gets to this stage of the playoffs. So like the nerves are going to be there, but are they going to be there to the extent of some of these other teams? Not a chance. And this is a team that's been there before. They're used to this kind of level of play. They're going to be tough to take down. But in saying that too, we don't know what the weather's going to be like. We don't know if there's going to be lingering effects. If there are, that's going to be a challenge too that you're going to have to face if you're the Eagles.
Let's look at the Storm Tracker 21 app and see what the weather's going to be like tomorrow.
Because I was going to say, you talked about that hurricane, and I've heard there's going to be lingering effects this weekend. I don't know what the weather's projected to be like for kickoff tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
60% chance of rain tomorrow.
Roll of the dice, right?
It starts at 1 p.m.
So a roll of the dice right now, and if it is, that would probably benefit Southern style a ton too, if you could kind of prohibit that passing game in any way. But the thing is, Southern, it's going to be the similar case, but regardless of weather, Southern's going to want to make sure that if JFK is going to score on them, they have to take it the length of the field, or they got to take it 80 yards, 75 yards. You don't want to give JFK short field position to score, because we've seen Southern multiple times this year. When you give them a long field defensively, they are a tough team, damn near impossible at times to score against. When they have those short field positions, when the offense has those turnovers, which they're going to have to try to avoid in the worst way against the Eagles, when you put the defense in that short field position, that's when they've gotten scored against. And that's what JFK is going to look to get in. They've been really good at getting those turnovers all season. They get those turnovers, they're very good at scoring in a blink of an eye.
I wonder how much film of Springfield's defense Southern is going to watch, because Springfield really did slow down JFK's offense, held them 13 points in that 13-6 win. So maybe there are some blueprints there. And I've always said blueprints are great, but you have to have the tools to execute them. So don't know how much Southern's personnel lines up with Springfield's on what they ran and things like that. But definitely some things to learn about how do we kind of keep this JFK offense in check. But then you have to figure out how do we score against their defense, because Southern has had a couple of games this year where their offense has struggled mightily to score, and JFK just held Springfield to 6. So you're going to have to solve that problem too, of how do we score against this JFK defense. And not many people have figured that out.
And you know what? Respect to JFK too, because that might have been one of the hardest 1-versus-8 matchups that JFK has had to face in history of them being a 1 seed, honestly. And in beating Springfield, the way they had to beat Springfield, knowing Springfield was not going to be an easy pushover. We knew it was going to be a close game. And JFK survived a red-hot Springfield team that had won, 7 straight going into that point, including the playoffs. So they were a red-hot team. JFK cooled them off. This is going to be a case, too, where JFK, they can win in a multitude of ways. They're not just a high-flying offense. They're not just a defensive juggernaut. They're a team that can win however you play them. And that's the challenging thing about playing JFK year in and year out. If you want to beat them, you just got to go out and beat them. You have to be the better team. You have to be disciplined. You have to execute, and you got to try to limit turnovers in the worst way.
Here's a last piece of advice for Southern, because every team makes no team plays a perfect game. Like they blow a coverage somewhere, they miss a gap, or something happened. Like there's going to be opportunities. You got to take advantage of those mistakes when they happen, because JFK is a team that if you don't, they're going to beat you. I mean, that's just the end of the day. It's like in baseball. No pitcher pitches a game where they hit every spot every single time, right?
Yeah.
And every pitcher is hittable to an extent. But the difference is, like, can you hit their mistakes when they make them, right? And if they make a couple of them a game, you only have a couple of chances. Can you hit those mistakes? Can Southern capitalize on the very few but happening mistakes that JFK makes, whether they be on offense or defense, tomorrow night? Because that's going to be telling. Because when this game is close down the stretch, JFK's playoff experience is going to come into play. Like they know how to win games. They're going to go make game-winning plays. So Southern has to make sure that everything they do, they do everything they can to put them away when they have the opportunity to.
When you get fed opportunities, you better eat, and you can't leave anything on the table. And if you do, it might spell the end of your season. I'm excited for this, though. All YSN matchups, either way, we're guaranteed representation in the regional final.
I know that's what's exciting, because football is officially the last sport standing, with our soccer teams losing on Wednesday.
Both close games.
The last chance to get somebody in the state championship game.
Both close games in those soccer matchups. They were tough losses for both teams. And, I mean, we wish both of them best of luck. Howell and Mooney, they had phenomenal seasons this year.
And we've said it before, you get into the Final Four, you've done something amazing. I don't care what
Every
sport.
single year, our soccer teams are able to do so. A soccer team in this area is able to get to that kind of level. It's crazy.
All right, so the playoff games aren't the only thing that is happening this weekend. We're going to end the show by talking about what's going on Saturday night in Crestview. It is the first ever YSN All-Star game for volleyball. Crestview High School at 6 o'clock. Me and Ty will be there. We're going to be on the call together for the first time since the softball All-Star game back in the summer. So excited for that. This has been in the works for a while. I know we kind of announced that it was going to we committed that it was going to happen back in August on Running Point. DJ came on and said, hey, we are going to have a volleyball all-star game. Fast forward to now, here we are on November 11th now, but it'll be November 12th tomorrow. And we have found out all the details. We hammered it down. Crestview has been gracious enough to let us host. Paul Cusick, the AD, has been nothing but open door, red carpet policy to have us have this game. He's been able to take care of the referees. They're going to have a concession stand run by Greg Esker and the softball team have volunteered their time to run a concession stand. And 41 teams are going to be represented tomorrow in the YSN family, including a lot of teams that are just freshly signed out of Ashtabula County with the 440 goal team. So we're going to see some players that we didn't get to see live in the volleyball season. Ashtabula St. John is represented. Pymatuning Valley is represented. Grand Valley is represented. Edgewood's represented. So it's going to be a really fun time seeing those players come in and kind of be welcomed into the YSN family. As far as that, and then, of course, all but one of our postseason award winners will be there. We're going to have our Player of the Year, Jocelyn Jordan. She's going to be there putting on a show. Grace Hour, Abby M, are going to be there. And then you have, Tara Lytle, our Offensive Player of the Year. She's going to be there. Our Freshman of the Year and Riley Simons. She's going to be there representing Austintown Fitch. Samantha Allett, our Setter of the Year, is going to be there representing Middle Ridge. Going to be a real fun time watching the area's best volleyball players put on a show one more time representing their schools.
First annual, and it's a week before the start of basketball season. Literally the next Saturday is tip-off around the area for basketball.
The next Friday, the 18th.
Is it 18th? Well, I think games don't start for us until the 19th, but Friday.
Lowville plays on the 18th against Campbell on the girls' side.
Oh, do they?
Lakeview plays East, I think, on the 18th.
So they're taking advantage of that first Friday before the boys are starting too. Because I know they usually avoid Fridays because that's boys basketball night. But I know boys don't start until the 23rd this season, I believe, is when boys tip off. But basketball's around the corner, and a lot of those athletes are going to be on the hardwood again, but you get to see them one more time on the volleyball.
Some players are coming from a basketball scrimmage in the morning to play in the volleyball all-star game.
Yeah. And you know what? We've been doing that too. We've also been trying to get you guys prepared for the basketball season too. I know plenty of coaches have been coming on Running Point too. You've been joined by almost one a day as well. So
and I've been playing a lot of yours too. So we've had a lot of basketball coverage.
So we've been taking care of that front while we're also making sure we get you the best football coverage, while we're making sure we're taking care of the volleyball scene. We got you covered on all fronts, folks.
To say there's a lot going on at YSN right now would be an understatement. This is kind of where this is the busiest time when all those seasons are kind of colliding. You're getting ready for the start of one, but the end of the other isn't done yet. And we're putting together an all-star game into that, all that. So, there's a lot going on. But one last thing to mention about the all-star game. Yes, it's going to be great seeing all these volleyball players put on a show. But the most important thing about all these all-star games that we put on is that we are using the proceeds to help people in need. This time around, it's going to be going to Winnie's Warriors. Winnie is a 2-year-old in the YSN community that is fiercely fighting leukemia right now. And all the proceeds of the ticket sales, $5 per person to get in, by the way, all those proceeds will go to her and her family as she continues to inspire everybody by fighting through childhood cancer, which is just something that no one is okay with. It's one of those sad realities in this world that we have to deal with, but we're going to get behind her, get behind that community, get behind every community that we have. And we're going to show her what YSN's community is all about by showing up on Saturday at 6 o'clock, watching great volleyball, but more importantly, giving back to a really, really, really great cause.
It should be a great night too, highlighted by proceeds going to a great cause. Like you said, Anthony, it's going to be $5 to get in at Crestview High School. The place to be. 6 p.m. is when it starts. Probably going to want to get there a little bit early too. Obviously, players get there early as well. I believe already instructions have been sent to all of them.
Player check-ins at 4.
Yep.
They'll get about an hour with their coaches to kind of game plan, see what rotations they want to use, who's in a set when, kind of the inner workings of volleyball. You got to be a little bit fine-tuned. So we gave them a little bit more time to make sure they have all their lineups and rotations set so they can make sure everyone gets on the floor, but they're also doing it in a way that helps everyone succeed. Puts them in the best to succeed, I should say. So they'll do that. And then, by the way, shout out to Coach Birch from Boardman and Coach Guthrie from Lakeview. They're going to be our 2 representatives on the bench. They have volunteered their time to help. They both have experience in coaching at club volleyball, which means they have plenty of experience taking hand-picked talent and putting them on a roster. So this all-star game should be not too hard to handle. Also, shout out to Casey Landsberger, who is going to be Alyssa Birch's assistant for this game. Unfortunately, Coach Birch's staff is unavailable. So the Crestview assistant coach, Casey Landsberger, is going to be on site helping out with Coach Birch to give Crestview a little bit more representation on the coaching staff as Coach Hauer is on a much-deserved cruise in Baltimore this weekend. So we wish her the happiest travels and the greatest times on that cruise. But we definitely are glad that we're still able to get a coach on the bench for Crestview, as well as 2 players to represent them. And obviously their gym hosting the game.
Yeah, it's going to be great, too. Great time in Crestview. You don't want to miss it tomorrow. If you're not going to one of the football games, you can come out and support the volleyball teams, too. All 41 teams represented tomorrow night in Crestview.
Every team was invited, and we had 41 responses, which is awesome. And rosters can be found on ysnlive.com, so you can see what team your favorite player is on, Coach Guthrie or Coach Birch. So that can be found on ysnlive.com, and it's going to be a fun time. Mr. B is going to be announcing in the press box to make it have that
legend
professional feel. So that's going to be exciting.
He's a legend.
If you can't make it, it'll be broadcasted on ysnlive.com at 6:00. We're going to have fun with that broadcast. Maybe get some players on in between sets and interview some players that are there represented as well. As always, if you want autographs, feel free to bring your volleyballs, your whatever you want to bring to get autographed by the players while they're on the bench. We'll hold autograph sessions as well. We'll have all the stuff that we always have at our All-Star games. It's going to be a fun time. We'll take this time to also, once again, hit the fact that it's playoff Friday, playoff Saturday. All games this weekend, when you're talking about playoff football, can be purchased with one payment of $9.99. So one payment of $9.99 gets you access to every game over the weekend. So if you buy Cardinal Mooney tonight, if you buy South Rain tonight, you buy, Erston and Canfield, you buy one of those games tonight, you get access not only to the other game tonight, but you also get access to the 3 games that are going to be happening tomorrow. Take advantage of that. And like we do every week, I want to remind everybody that if it's not $9.99, it's not us. Don't fall for the scams. Don't subscribe to anything. There are no subscriptions you have to follow. It is one payment of $9.99. And if it's not that, it's not us. So please be careful when you're paying, and make sure you follow the instructions that are on our website. And when you do, you have to hit the playlist button. This popped up a couple of times last week. You'll purchase the link, you'll go to the link, and you'll have a screen that says, click here to get the games, and it'll point to a playlist button in the top right corner. You have to click that playlist button to find the game that you want to watch. It's not going to play on that screen. You have to hit playlist, find the game, hit play, you're golden. It's a big red arrow pointing you to where to click. Big red arrow. You can't miss it.
It lets you know for sure. We got a party going on tonight and tomorrow night in the sports world.
I'm excited. Let's go.
It's kind of the culmination of some fall sports while we're getting ready for winter sports. Football, of course, stays alive. Hopefully, well, it is for a few of our teams. Hopefully, for the non-YSN matchups, we see some good things coming out. Hopefully, Jefferson and West Branch do their thing. But for the teams that are battling all YSN matchups, best of luck to both Mooney, South Range, Ursuline, Canfield, and JFK and Southern in those all YSN matchups. We're rooting for whoever comes out on top to go all the way.
We're guaranteed 3 games next week.
We are definitely
No matter
guaranteed
what.
3.
We're gonna
I'm
have some
hoping we
games.
get 5. I hope we get 5.
So 5 for $5 foot long. Let's go.
Yeah.
Ty Bartel, Anthony Hartwig. This has been Running Point, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. We'll be back on Monday from 1 to 2 to recap all the action, and we'll also continue our basketball previews on Monday as well. Going to be a fun time as we kick into the first week of basketball next week.
It's going to be
Here
crazy.
we go. Let's go. See you guys on Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Power Hour has you from 3 to 4, the Super Show, where you'll hear from a bunch of our personalities on what way they think this game is going to go tonight.
A lot of names that are going to be calling the games tonight, too.
Yep. Make sure to check in on that before you watch the games tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in.